ones, I tend to just stick to one at a time.
I think that's a good way to go. All right, it is
And
6 o'clock. So let's kick this off. So I'm excited to share that this month for Meet the Maker, we have Sierra, the mastermind behind All Knit Up Designs, and she's going to tell us about her business, a little bit about her, and much, much more. So welcome, welcome, welcome to Meet the Maker. Oh, one more time. Here we go.
perfect. I keep muting myself so that I don't talk and interrupt you. And then it's like the host has to unmute you. So,
No, you just leave yourself unmuted and talk up a store.
okay.
How are you tonight?
Um, I am doing pretty well. I'm not usually a fan of the time change, but I am very, very happy to have a little more sunlight hours now. So if people don't know, my name is Sierra. I, like Jessica said, own All It Up Designs, and I live in the Olympic Peninsula in Washington. So I am up in not the northernmost part of the United States, but on the very edge of out here in Washington. And winter, I moved up here in spring of 2021, and winter can be slightly gray. So I am enjoying my extra hour of daylight and what feels like a little more like easy knitting time. Once I feel like I have to turn on my like around my neck lights, then it's like, okay, it's dark time and I'm on my way. But when I have like regular daylight, I'm like, feels a little more leisurely than like
Absolutely.
being in my cocoon.
I love
But right. So I did learn to knit when I was 14, when and
Okay.
on my drive down here, when I was thinking about what we were going to talk about, realized it's almost 20 years.
Yikes. Stop. I would
Which
never guess that.
yeah, so I turned 33 in May. So um
Okay.
it's been almost 20 years since I learned how to knit. And my mom and I took a class for my 14th birthday. And I
Oh,
picked, right? So my mom and I learned to knit at the same time. We took a class at the local yarn shop in the town next to us. And then I picked knitting back up when I went to college. I had more free time than I had anticipated, and I could only watch like so much Dancing with the Stars before I was like not remembering anything. So I picked knitting back up. And then it all just kind of like tumbled from there. I met my local knit group. I had been at Joanne, and one of the moms and daughter was there, and we're like, we heard you talking about yarn. Like, not to be nosy, but we have a knit group. As knitters are like inviting everybody. And so when I moved back to my college town that summer, I joined the knit group and got lots of wonderful women in my life and people who took care of me and let me come to the house and do laundry and gave me yarn. Um, and then I found fiber festivals, and then a yarn shop opened in the town I grew up in. And so I finished college, started working for the yarn shop, and I worked at the yarn shop either part time or full time from 2012 to right at the end of, I stopped working at the New Year's for 2020. That was,
okay.
I put my first design out, Color Riot, which is this shawl here.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Thank you. That came out in spring of 2018.
Okay. So
2018.
you've been designing for 7 years, almost 8 years?
Well, I put my first shawl out. And no, I want to say that was 2019. Sorry, wrong year. I put it out
Seriously.
and then I was like it picked up traction right away. And I was kind of shocked and bewildered by that. I was like, "Oh, people really like my stuff. Like, how exciting for me." And I asked my mom and I was like, "Think I could design as a career?" And she's my mother, so she's like, "Of course you can."
No.
I'm like, "Do you think I can do this?" Like, don't be like, "Of course you can." Like, "Do you think it's a," and she's like, "Of course you can." So I waited a few months and I had designs kind of built up because I was like, well, if you're going to design, you are going to put like, you're going to have your stuff together. And I waited about 6 months for my first one and had designs going out. And by the end of that year, I decided to quit my job. Um, with the caveat that I did go back. I had been a nanny previously, so I went back to nannying and I got to nanny part time and work my design business part time, which
Love.
coincided actually pretty closely to when we had COVID lockdown. So I got to stay with my kiddo who was 6 months old, and I nannied him 3 days a week, and I worked my design business. And then in spring of 2021, so about a full year and a few months, then I was able to do it full time, and that was when I moved up here. I kind of looked at all my finances and saw my stuff, and I was like, okay, this is what you're making. This is your average. You want to start designing project bags, which I hadn't started to do like commercially yet. I'd sold them in my
Mm-hmm.
local yarn shop, but I didn't have an Etsy or anything set up. Didn't have tags on anything. It was just kind of, I want to make project bags and I want to buy fabric, so I need to figure out how to make money too to continue to
Absolutely.
buy the things that I want. My boss, who owned the yarn shop, also owned a quilt shop. So I worked in both stores and I was
Okay.
surrounded by everything all the time. So it was kind of a easy transition into doing. Um, and then, yeah, then I got to do it full time and I moved up here and got to start meeting all of these other fabulous people, business owners and knitters up here. And then we did our first show, and that was my local show here in Port Angeles. And I was like, wow, this is like being in a yarn shop, but better because it's all my stuff and I get to talk about all the cool
Right.
things. So now we do shows. I think we did 10 shows last year.
That's
And
outstanding.
yeah, and then trunk shows, and I talked to our local guild out here. And so now it's just kind of coming from everywhere. So the plan is to continue to be able to do that.
I love that.
But so
All
that's
right.
that's that's my all knit up design story. But Jessica, you have some questions for me. So
I do. So I'm
I'm
going to
safe.
take it all the way back. So let's go back. So you said you moved up here. Where did you move
Yes.
from?
I grew up in Winters, California, which is in the northern section. If you're looking at the state where you have a straight and then you go to the bend, right at kind of like the straight portion.
Okay.
It's about an hour and a half above the Bay Area and about 40 minutes from Sacramento.
Okay.
It's a little farming town. There was like 6,000 people there when I was growing up, and right now they're like at about 10 or 11. So it's grown, but
Okay.
it's still
Yeah.
like we had like one grocery store. We had like to go to the next town, it's you take the highway and country road, that kind of stuff. So that's where I grew up. And then we got to go to China in 2018 with a group. Um, and a lot of the people who were in our group were from this area. We had
Okay.
Port Angeles, Squim, Whidbey, Bainbridge, Seattle, Portland, and everybody's like, you should come and check out. When I found out like what my plan, I was like, I told people like, I want to be in fiber industry. I don't know what I want to do yet. I don't know if I want to plan shows. I don't know if I want to design patterns, like, but this is what I want to do. And this was before I designed my first pattern. And they were like, you should come check out the rain shadow. I'm like, what the heck is that? And like kind of once I like researched it and saw it, and I was like, okay. So we went to China in the spring, in the fall. My mom and I made a trip up here and we're like, we're going to go to Seattle. We're going to visit somebody who lives in Olympia. And
Okay.
when we were in Olympia, we're like, Port Angeles is like 2 hours. Should we just make a drive to see that area and see what? And we drove up here, and I was like, oh, I am moving here. I'm like, it's fall. So where I grew up, everything's brown. By fall,
Okay.
the grass is yellow, the hills are yellow, tree. It's like I said, farming towns. We have beautiful orchards and lush
Right.
farms, and but it is majestic up here. Everything
Mhm.
is just so green and beautiful, and we make this drive. I call it the curve, but you come down the hill and there's this curve in Port Angeles, and there's like a huge mountain and just this valley. And I was like, I will be living here. I don't know when I'm moving, but I am moving. And I had told my parents that, and um, the area that I grew up in now is very fire prone.
Mhm.
So I was like, you know what? 2021, I'm not going through another fire season. I'm not doing it. I'm moving. So I made the decision in January, and I apartment hunting and all that kind of stuff. And I did it for out of state. I told everybody, I was like, I can't come and see it. I live out of state. I won't be there. Sight unseen, but I need an apartment. And I moved in April 1st.
I love it.
Yes. And that is how
Okay.
I got to end up here.
So tell us about your first shop. What was your first shop? How did you get involved? What was it like working there?
Working at the yarn shop, it's
Heck yeah.
magical. It's magical. Working at a yarn store is getting to talk about my favorite topic 5 days a week.
Yes.
Um, and everybody who comes into the yarn store, even if they are having a problem that they need fixed on their project, or they're having questions about their gauge or looking for certain yarn, are like enmeshed in knitting. I can crochet. I do not call myself a crocheter because I do not
Mhm.
think it does it justice. So I am primarily a knitter who can crochet,
Okay.
but they can come in with their questions, and so I have fixed hundreds of problems that I now know because I've already fixed somebody else's, how I can do it myself without having that issue. That's also something I've been
Absolutely.
able to implement into my patterns, is that I'm like, okay, this was like a sore point in other people's designs. This is what knitters weren't understanding. So how can you rephrase that so that there isn't that issue anymore? It's like in my patterns, when there's a repeat, I'll say you repeat rows 1 through 12 3 times, 3 more times. And then in parentheses next to it, I'll say 4 times total, so that you know how many more times that repeat was and then what the total count was. So there isn't a whole lot of guesswork. Um, I also don't leave my patterns very wordy, because people don't like to read, they just want to knit. So I make most of my stuff pretty straightforward. But yeah, and then I got to discuss yarn every day. Somebody comes in and it's like, some people just want to browse, and I just kind of say, hey, how you doing? If you have any questions, let me know. Shop is set up by weight, so we start with lace weight here, go around this way. If you have any questions, I should be able to answer them. And so I got to like design color palettes for things that weren't my palette, which was really
Yeah.
cool and great experience because like I know what I like cranberry, I like pink, I like teals and greens, but like I'm not much for a moody palette I can thoroughly enjoy, but I'm not going to pick it for myself. So to get that experience of like people, I'm like, well, what colors do you like? Do you like a beach theme? Do you go more fall colors? So then we could kind of pick and see, and to see somebody's eyes light up when you've picked the right color combo for them is exciting. So
Yes.
it felt like just this space of like tons of positive input on like,
Absolutely.
even it, like I said, even if people were in there to get a problem fixed, that they were then so happy that either I fixed it, or I could say, hey, you've moved past being a beginning knitter because you identified a problem, and yes, you did fix it
Yeah.
correctly. So like now you've reached your next step. So it's pretty cool that I get to help so many knitters in their journey on being a knitter. Um, so what I did get to do a festival that used to be my local festival when I lived in California. And it was very cool to be there vending at this event that I had always been a knitter at, and then see
Oh,
all my local ladies who were like, I knew her before she even designed anything. I knew her when she worked at the yarn shop. So um, my boss still owns a yarn shop. She did move town, so it's in the one next to us. But I did a trunk show back of the store that I had worked at, and I did that this fall. And so it's been.
what yarn shop is that? In case anybody wants to pop in and see.
Yes. So it is Cloth Carousel Fabric and Fiber, and that is
Okay.
in Vacaville, California. So we're
Okay.
now in one building, and they have the quilting fabric and the yarn all in one location. And then they do have an online yarn shop as well. And then I do know, I believe they're still doing $5 flat rate shipping. So if you decide to get anything, you can get it all shipped for $5. And Adina and her crew are amazing. Oh my God, you go to Cloth Carousel? Isn't that fabulous? So yes, I used to work for Adina when her shop was in
I love
Winters.
it.
And I also worked for the previous owner as well. So I had been a fixture at the Winters Yarn Shop for quite a long time, and that is where I started as a baby knitter. I did not even know when I first started at working at the yarn shop that there was two different ways to knit. I learned to knit continental. That is how I was taught. That's how I always knit. I had somebody come in and ask me to fix this. And I'm like, no problem. Start doing it. She's like, why are you holding the yarn in your left hand? I'm like, well, way do you hold it? Because she's holding it right. And I was like, oh shit, I have some learning to do. So I
Love
did
it.
teach myself how to throw so that I
Okay.
could answer people's questions and like because the movements look very different. If you're used to throwing and then you see somebody holding it with their left, there is not as much movement. So it's hard for people's brain to like recognize the same thing. So
Absolutely.
I taught myself to throw so that I could ask people, how do you knit? And then I could show them how to fix their problem in the way that they knit. Um, I don't throw because I don't like it. I think it's time consuming and I like to knit fast, which is why I only use metal needles. Um,
I
but
love metal needles. Yes.
Hayas have been my needles of choice
Okay.
almost since I was a knitter. Um, my mom and I, like I said, we started getting back into knitting at the same time. When I was at school, I was like, so I went to school about 2.5 hours from where I grew up, and I was like, Mom, I got back into knitting. She's like, I will too. So we kind of started doing it again at the same time, and we'd like show each other our like two short hats and be like, look what we did, or like looking great. And we started off, we tried some addies, we tried some wood ones. For a while, Jimmy Beans had carried like a Knitter's Pride like multi-set where you could had like 6 or 7 different tips. We tried that set, and then I was given a pair of Hayas, and I was like, mother, you need to try these. These are the best things ever. So I've had the same sets. I have, I think, 3 or 4 sets of Hayas because they come in both short and long.
Yep.
And then they have what they call like a small set and a big set. So small is like 2 through 8, and large is like 9 through 15 or 17 or something. So I think I own like altogether 4 sets. So 2 of the shorts and 2 of the longs. Um, and I've had them, like I said, for like 15 years probably. And I've never had to change my set. I've never had anything like majorly break, none of my cables, nothing. So I knit with Haya sharp needles and I will forever. And I've
I
tried other
love it.
ones. I've tried Chowgoos. I tried Addies. Like I even I have a pair of signature needles that my mom bought me that have my business name on them. Like I have tried.
These are so
Yeah.
cute.
So when Signature was open, you could get your needles engraved. So I do have a pair of like size 5 needles engraved with my business name on them. But Hayas are my choice. That's what I'm going to use always. So my 9-inch ones that I'm knitting my socks on are also Hayas right now.
Okay.
Um, so yes, metal needles, Hayas. But for the long-winded question of where am I from, Northern California, and my yarn shop that I worked at is Cloth Carousel, and they're fabulous. I
I
love
love
their
it.
team there. They're very inclusive. Adina is wonderful. She wrote a great email about the closures for Joanne and how
Mm,
to invite people into the community and making sure that we have outreach, letting people know that we have a shop there and places they can go to, and what are some things that some of her people may want brought into the store that she could bring in that they were able to get there. So um, she's really really cool lady and into the community, not just like her business community, but being in like the downtown associations and
yeah.
making sure we're supporting local restaurants and stuff. So yeah, Cloth Carousel, I think they're awesome. So if you decide to do anything, you let them know, hey, Sierra sent me this way. And I think there's a majority of a new crew working there, so not everybody who's working will know, but Adina and Scott is her son. He runs inventory. He does all the check-in of everything. If we are looking for something, we're going to ask him. But they're fabulous. So I will always be back in her store.
Love that. And I love that you still say we because it just shows how like engaged you are and how attached you are. Like that shop is a part of you. And I love that.
Oh, that is, like I said, so this was when I had worked for the previous owner, but one of the ladies who'd come in, who was one of my regulars, taught me how to cable because I didn't know how to do that yet when I'd started.
Okay.
And she was like, this is how you cable. I'm like, this is how you cable? This is heck easy. Like, no one's making this big deal of it, and this is simple. So like all the literally as a baby knitter, like I had just graduated college, and I was like, I don't call what I'm gonna do. I thought I was gonna teach high school history, and then I was
Oh,
like planning on doing my master's, and I was like, do you want to be with like 16 or 17-year-olds for the next 20 years? Hell no. No, I do not. So obviously, I do not teach history. So yeah, I have a degree in American history with it. Well, I have a degree in history with the emphasis on the United States, that I don't use. Well, I should say that I don't use the knowledge that I gained, but all the practices and the research and the writing of papers and
yes.
rechecking myself and all the wonderful knitting people that I met there, I still use.
I
I just
love
don't
that.
I just don't write history books or teach history classes to high schoolers.
Well, and I think you called out something that's really important, right? Like you may not be using your degree, but the skills that you learned and the community that you've built, all of those things still apply.
Yeah, so Jessica and I had talked previously. So um to graduate college, I had to do a essentially an undergrad thesis. So it was like a 30-page paper to write on whatever topic you wanted. Fortunately, the person who was directing our undergrad thesis was like, but if you guys have other things that you think would work, I'm totally open to that. And I was like, thank God, because I'm not writing a 30-page paper. So I actually did my research was on women knitting and American patriotism in World War II. And I did a museum exhibit and knit World War II pieces and set up a whole exhibit and then was able to talk about how um, knitting crossed class and racial divides during World War II and how the vast majority of women were able to show their patriotism by knitting and providing knits for our soldiers who are abroad. And it was very, very cool. I am still in the process of looking for my knits that I did because I know I didn't get rid of them. I just don't know where
Yes.
they are in my apartment. When I do find them, I will hook back up with Jessica and I will give you guys a video tour of everything that I did because it was very, very cool. And I'm very grateful that the guy who was doing our thesis was willing to do that, because I wasn't going to write that paper. And I had to get my degree.
Right. Oh my goodness. Okay. So tell us a little about Sierra. So we know now about growing up and how you got involved in the yarn shop, but who are you? What are your hobbies? Tell us about you. Favorite foods, all the good stuff.
Tell them about me.
Yeah.
Um, well, let's see. Obviously, I have very curly hair. That's been a learning curve for me. Um, my hair didn't start growing curly till I hit puberty, so I was about
Oh wow.
10, 11 probably, and my
Okay.
hair had always been very long, and I chopped it off to my shoulders, and then it's gotten progressively curlier. So it's been like something that I've learned with and kind of had to like figure out. It sounds weird, but like my youngest sister has wavy hair, my middle sister has straight hair. My parents, my mom's got a little bit of texture and wave to hers. My dad has always kept his short, so nobody in my family had curly hair. So that was just kind of like something that was different
Yeah.
than the people who I was around. So it's always been something where I'm like, all right, let's figure out moving up here, totally different experience. The water is different, the humidity is different. So like I had
Yeah.
to relearn all of this stuff, which was a little bit of like obnoxious, but then I just was kind of like, you just have to go with the flow. So
Yes.
I'm mostly, well, I'm mostly pretty easygoing sometimes about some things. I'm easygoing about some things, and then other things can like really unsettle me. But what about me? I can tell you the things that I don't like. I don't like coffee. I don't like tea. I like to drink
Right.
kombucha.
Stop. You don't like coffee.
I
I
don't
don't
do
even
coffee
remember.
or tea. I don't drink any
Oh my
caffeinated
gosh.
beverages. If I'm getting something, it's either lemonade or kombucha because I don't drink soda either.
Okay, so no caffeinated beverages at all.
No, I do
Has this been
not.
all of your life?
So I stopped drinking soda in high school because we took a health class that we had like freshman year, you have like geography, health, and then like finance or something was like every 3 months you switched. And we watched a video of Coke cleaning a penny. And I was like, hell no. If that's what it can do to a piece of copper, what is it doing to my insides? So I quit drinking soda then.
Okay.
um,
Okay.
so I haven't drank soda since I was in the freshman year of high school. I've never been a coffee drinker, ever. I can tolerate the smell because I used to work at a restaurant too. When I was in high school, I was a busser in high school, and then when I got into college and in the summers, then I started working as a server. I worked as a bartender for a little bit, but I was good at it, not great at it. I can make great drinks, but I'm not great at small talk. So I was not a great bartender.
I get
um,
that. I get that.
but I was a very good server in another small family business. So I've only worked for small businesses. I've never worked for a corporation or anything like larger. I've only ever worked for small. So that's always interesting, like talking with other people and talking about their work experiences. And I'm like, well, I
Yeah.
haven't had that. I've only worked for small businesses. So I actually feel pretty grateful for that I've had all those opportunities. The restaurant that I worked at, their eldest daughter was the same age I was. So I knew them growing up. So they'd always told me, as soon as you need a job, come to the restaurant. As soon as you need a job, come and get an application. So like
Oh,
I went in my summer between like junior and senior year. I was like, hey, I need a job. And they're like, cool, you're gonna be a busser. Fill out your application. Like I showed up to like get a job and then got an application form. And then
there you go.
my sisters actually worked for the same restaurant too. So there was a Kruen girl in the restaurant for like 8 or 10 years. Um, which is pretty cool. It's no, they closed. They
Oh,
actually, well, they retired. So
okay.
difference. They retired and closed their business.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, so we all worked there for a very, very long time, and it funded lots of trips for me. So that's one thing I like to travel. I like to
Okay.
find new places. I like to find and learn different things. So I've been to Europe probably 5 times. And like I said,
Mhm.
I also went to China. Um, as I'm now building my business, my travel and COVID, my travel has been more within the United States. But it's been fun to explore the like PNW and all these new cities and places that didn't even know exist. And I have to,
Right.
most of the time when we get there, I have to ask people how to pronounce the name because a
Like,
lot of our towns are native based. So yeah, the town, so I live in Port Angeles, which is literally named after the port that is in the water.
yep.
Nothing special about where we are. But the town next to us is Squim, which if you are looking, trying to pronounce it the way that it is, it's Sequim, but it's
Hmm.
pronounced Squim. So I do a lot of asking people like, hey, how do you pronounce that? I want to make sure I'm saying that correctly. Hey, how do you pronounce that? Is it this way? And they're like, no, that's not, this is the way you say it. I'm like, okay, thank you. I want to make sure I'm saying it right, first of all. And then I would like to start sounding like somebody who grew up here instead of somebody who moved here. So I will continue to ask. No questions are bad. I do not mind asking questions. I do not mind answering questions. I do that with when people ask me for about my patterns and they're like, hey, this may seem silly, but I have this. And I'm like, there are no silly questions. If you have a question, I'm happy to answer it. I want you to have that knowledge and be comfortable in what you're doing. So, but what else about me? I like
Any
to
other hobby?
do other hobbies. Well, my other part of my business is selling project bags.
Mhm.
So I do really enjoy,
Oh,
I would
that's
say,
beautiful.
isn't it? So California poppies, the golden poppy is my favorite
Yes.
flower. So there's
Okay.
something about me that is my favorite flower. They used to just come in spring when I lived in California because I
Yeah.
grew up and it's very, very hot in the valley I grew up in. So they were there for like 3 or 4 weeks and gone.
Okay.
And it would just felt like spring was coming. My birthday's in May, summer is coming, school's almost done. So like they just represent that, like, okay, fun is coming, spring is coming. Up
Yes.
here, we have them for like 8 months out of the year. Oh my God, it's so exciting. We have two different kinds. We have like the longer one and a shorter one, and the shorter ones come in the fall. And it just brings me so much freaking joy to see
I
those
love that.
flowers all over. So, yes, I also have a project bag for myself.
That's
um,
beautiful.
in the poppy fabric. I was able to find more of it. So I do have some plant cut. So there were probably some in the shop in the next month or two, um,
Okay.
because it was just too pretty not to get some more. Bought it at Cloth
Absolutely.
Carousel. Surprise. I went there for a trunk show
Okay.
and then bought a crap ton of fabric to bring back to Washington with me.
There you go.
Um, so yes, I like to sew my project bags.
Okay.
I don't really like to sew a whole lot of other things. Um, Last year, right before my birthday, I was diagnosed with ADHD, um, which means I don't have a lot of patience with things that I am new at.
Mm,
So sometimes sewing other things that have different, like sewing my bags now. The bags are mine from scratch. I designed my own template. I designed all the instructions myself. So I know all the pieces by heart. I could probably sew a bag half asleep because I know all the pieces. So
right.
it's very meditative and I can like listen to podcasts or listen to music and um I like crime podcasts, true crime podcasts, and then I like EDM music, which is like electronic
Okay.
dance music.
Yes.
I also listen to like uh I'm I'm a millennial, so I have like a throwback millennial playlist. And then I
Okay, but so
also
what's on it? What are some
um
examples of what's on it?
oh, we've got some Usher on there, we have some
Yeah.
Kesha on there. I mean, we have some old Bay on there, Miss Beyonce, got some of her
Oh,
older
yeah.
songs, got some Sierra on there. I mean, I'm telling you, it's like a throwback
Okay.
millennials. I graduated high school in 2010, if that puts
Okay.
into
I love it.
context what
I
kind of
love it.
music am I. I also can tell you I have a Disney playlist that's like all the hits of all the Disney songs. That one can be in there too. So I'm kind of a bit of an eclectic with music. It's kind of whatever like makes my brain really happy, is what I'm gonna go with. Um,
Yes.
I either want it to make me like give me a really good rhythm or make me want to sing. So I don't do, yeah, it's kind of a mix. I listen to a lot of country when I worked at the restaurant because that's what we had
Right.
on. So I know a lot of the like 2010s to 15 country because like that's when I was working in the restaurant. So it's a mixed bag for that. Um Reading wise, I do enjoy reading, though I'm in a little bit of a reading slump right now. But I do have up here I like to read knitting books because
Oh,
so
yeah.
knitting is my obsession. If we're gonna say, like, let me tell you about Sierra, I am a knitter. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not even like when I tell people what I do, I'm like, yes, I am a fiber artist. I design knitting patterns, but like if somebody asks me, like, who are you? I'm a knitter.
Yeah.
I want to be with
Absolutely.
fiber, I want to be with yarn, I want to be with color. So knitting books make me happy. I
Okay.
combine my job and my stuff. So like I have it's called Writers Writing About Knitting, Knitting Pearls, and it's edited by Anne Hood. Um, so I
Okay.
think I will be reading this next, and it's just going to be it's about writers who are knitters writing about knitting, just talking about their different stories and how it might have helped them or
Well,
connected with people or funny little comments. It could be anything. So I've got a bit of a stack of book of knitting books. And
I,
then my other ones are I do a lot of nonfiction reading. I want to make sure. Um, I also we'll start with I also really like kids, so I do a little bit of nannying on the side because I'm not going to have children, but I love them and I want to spend time with them. So 0 to 3 is my age range that I usually work with, so I do little kiddos. Um, which means I am either working by myself at home or I'm with toddlers or littler who cannot speak. So I try to do some nonfiction reading to make sure that I'm keeping up with my vocabulary and making sure I'm staying on top of different topics and keeping my brain working. Um,
love.
yeah, because I think self education is important to learn about
Yes.
different topics that you don't know about. And if there's a term you don't understand, I want to look it up. I want to know what it means. I check with my mom very frequently. If I use a word, I'm like, that's all right. What context for that, right? She's like, yeah, just because I want to make sure that my brain keeps working. So nonfiction is mostly what I read, which is boring for a lot of people, but that's okay. It's for
Like
me.
historical nonfiction, or what's your favorite genre?
Um, Honestly, right now I'm doing a lot of social justice reading. Um, because so the town I grew up in is primarily white or Mexican. And so I'm white, my parents are. We did not have a lot of diversity in the families that we were around. So I don't have a lot of like outside life experience.
Mhm.
So I want to understand people better. I want to be able to empathize with what they're saying and doing and understanding. So, like, one of my next ones I have up here. So, I work with kids. One of the next ones I want to do, this is a parent's guide, but I'm around kids enough that I am helping their parents parent. I am not parenting. I am not their parent, but I am around these little people who are sponges, learning and growing and asking questions and making connections. So to raise a good person, help raise a good person is to raise a critical thinker. So my next book I'm reading, it says A Parent's Guide to Growing Wise Kids in the Digital Age. So raising critical thinkers.
I love that.
Um, yes. So this one is on my book on my list. And then Ijeoma Oluwa, if you haven't read any of her books, is a fantastic writer.
Okay.
And her newest one that had come out is called Be a Revolution. So this one is also on my list for this year. Um, Her writing is really engaging. It sounds,
I-
she's very, she's super intelligent, but she breaks it down in a way where it makes me think, but it's not above a level. I don't feel like I'm reading a textbook. I'm
Right.
gaining all this great knowledge, but I don't feel like I'm reading a textbook. So those are the nonfictions I tend to read. I do like historical fiction. If I am going to read a fiction book, it's usually a World War II era um,
Okay.
historical fiction. Typically, I like it to have a female protagonist because there's a lot of books about dudes. So I'd rather read a book from the women's perspective, and all the cool things that they did in the war and how they survived and all these cool things. So I'll have a reading hobby. What else do I like to? I like to knit and gaze out my window. To be quite honest, I live, like I said, on the Olympic Peninsula. Right now it's covered in clouds, but I have the Olympic mountain range right outside of my window that I can see from my apartment. Um, and I literally will step outside in the mornings and be like, damn, that's pretty.
I love it.
Um, yeah, what else? So we
So
like,
talk to us about knitting. What's your favorite thing you've ever knit?
damn, that's a hard question. Um, we will break that down a little bit. So if I'm not in my knitting my own patterns, which is mostly what I have done since
Yeah.
like 2019. Before that, I am a Stephen West groupie.
Okay.
I have knit probably 12 or 13 of his different designs. And I cannot say that about anybody else. I have maybe knit one or two like Hoagie Locatelli, maybe like only a couple. I have knit like 12 at least Stephen West patterns because the
What do you think
man
about designs? Yeah.
is brilliant. The way he can put knitting together
Yeah.
breaks my brain just a little bit because you read some of this stuff. And so one of my favorite projects that I had done from him is called Vertices Unite. And it is a bunch of different sections that have the one I did was mostly striping in
Hmm.
garter. He also has one that was Textures Unite that it has a textured version, but the striping one is the one I did. And it's got a lot of like slip stitches and pick this up. And you're like, that's not going to work. There's not going to be enough. And then you go and you're like, it is freaking working. He,
Yep.
damn. So, yes, Vertices Unite is one of the favorite things that I have knit because it's flipping brilliant. So I also own his first book. I got to go to one of his book signings in one of the shops in
Oh,
California. So like
very
I
cool.
am a groupie. One of my trips to Europe, I have a second cousin who lives in Amsterdam. So I actually visited his yarn shop too. Um,
Oh,
I went to Amsterdam to go to the yarn store. Like I
I
said, my
love it.
second cousin lives there, so I got to stay with somebody, and it's
Yep.
the only reason I got to extend my trip is because it was essentially the plane ride to get to Amsterdam. I was in
Yep.
Spain and I was like, I'm going. I have families there, so like I'm gonna go. Even if I'm there for like 2 days, I'm going to the yarn shop. So yeah, I went to Amsterdam to go to Stephen West Yarn Shop. It was very cool. It was an
Yeah.
awesome city. I would love to go back. Um, I was frozen. We were there at spring break, and Amsterdam is more along the lines of like where the PNW is. But I grew up in
Okay.
California. Like
Yeah.
when we left California, it was in the freaking like 80s already. And I get
Right.
there and it's like in the 30s and low 40s, and I'm like frozen.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
as a little California girl was not fully prepared.
Oh,
Um, but it was a very cool city, and I would love to go. If I had the opportunity to go back, I would.
absolutely.
But yes, so knitting wise, Stephen West. If it's not mine, I've knit a lot of his stuff. Um, I am mostly so I design accessory patterns. So that's mostly what I knit. I occasionally knit a sweater, but it just doesn't bring the same amount of joy. I have
Oh,
a few ideas that I could dabble in for sweater designing, but it requires a like really special knowledge to do. If I want to if I want to do it, I want to do it correctly. And correctly
right.
is size inclusive and
Yes.
proportional to people's actual shapes. And I don't have any knowledge base in that. I haven't taken any classes or courses or anything. I don't have any experience in grading. So for the first year, I'd have to work with a grader, and that is a person who is actually taken courses and studied and can help grade your pattern for multiple sizes. So I could design it in the one, and then the grader would help to go both ways. Um, because you cannot just say, oh, you can just do everything proportionally. Well, just because I wear an extra large does not mean that my neck is going to be that much bigger than what you would have on an extra small size. So you cannot just size thing up proportionally because what should be a crew neck is going to turn into a boat neck. So I don't have that skill set yet. And it's not something I have any plans in the future to do. Just in my like future thinking, running a business is always kind of like, what do you want to be your next step? What do you want to be your next growth point? What would you like to come and hit and do? And I haven't marked that on any of my like, I want to do this. In at least in the next year or two. That's not any of my plans. Have I knit sweaters? Yes. Do I wear them? Yes. Do I plan to design anything anytime soon? Not really. Shawls are my bread and butter. They bring me so much joy. Like you saw Color Riot, that was the first one. And I like bought the yarn, the gradient set, which is in the body. And then you had that contrast, which was separate. And
Hmm.
my idea for the when I bought the yarn, I was like, okay, I want the contrast color to touch every one of the mini skeins. I don't want it
Yeah.
just on the last one. I want it to touch every one of them. And I was like, okay, well, you can't do an asymmetric triangle unless you want to pick something up. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to pick up stitches. That's boring. And yeah, most of my designs, if it looks like something's picked up, it was not. It was probably knit at the same time because I do not enjoy picking stuff up. It'll make me cuss and not have a good time. And then it'll go in timeout because I'm not interested in doing it.
Oh,
So I was like, well, asymmetric triangle, not going to work. Top down triangle, that won't work either. Crescent shape, nope, that's not going to work either. And I was like, well, damn, okay. So browse Ravelry because that's kind of my place to go to. And I really didn't find anything that fit what I had envisioned. And I didn't even envision a design. I just knew I wanted the colors to touch each one. And I was like, well, I guess you're just gonna have to try to make it up. Um, so I did. And that was just kind of how it started. And it's all done with like I call it faux short rows because like I'll tell you in the pattern, like knit the last two stitches, turn around and start working back. So there's no like wrap and turn or like German short, none
right.
of that. That's not fun. I don't want to do it. The vast majority, if it looks hard and I don't want to do it, I'm not going to. So if there is a simple to the point way of doing things, that's how I design. Um,
So let's dig into that a little bit because
yes.
patterns for social knitting.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you do.
Yes. So
Where
working
did
at the
this
yarn
idea
shop,
come? Yes.
it's actually from working at the yarn store. So I used to be a very non-monogamous knitter. I had like 6 projects going at a time, and I would switch things out and be because I was at the yarn shop like 8 hours a day. And like, yes, we had to do inventory and do cash and clean and that kind of stuff, but like I had time to knit. So
Yeah.
I was like, well, damn, girl, you can't work on the same project one at a time. You'd be bored AF. So I had lots of things going on. I carried a huge knit bag with me. Everybody knew the bag lady was coming because I had this like massive tote. People would have used this as like an overnight bag, and this was my like, I'm gonna carry my knitting bag to work bag. Um,
Oh, I love it.
and so the like idea of the social knitting came from being at the store because I needed a project I could like pick up and put down and not lose my place, be easy to find it again. If somebody came up and asked a question unexpectedly, it wasn't like I had to be like, oh, I'm counting. Like, so the intention
Oh,
was for people to have projects for knit night, watching TV, going to your kids' sporting games, going to your regular sporting games, like knitting at the library. Like that was the idea behind it. Social knitting, a knitting project that I can take and go and be social. Um,
absolutely.
and so that's kind of where it all stemmed from. I do a lot of, I'll like pick a stitch pattern and either repeat it throughout the shawl or maybe help it shift a little bit so then things move just a touch. But like with Color Riot, the only major changes in it are the color changes. That's what makes
Right,
Color Riot so like wow is is the
right,
colors that you put in it. The actual knitting for it, very simple. It's only knits. There are no purls in it. Like there's some yarn overs, there's like knit front and back into the yarn over, but it's a very simple knit. And that just kind of how the rest of it has come. So I do have a few others. So I have this shawl. I also really enjoy scrappy knits because I don't want to get rid of that little like walnut nugget. Like, first of all, it's way too damn pretty. Second of all, the little ball of yarn is like $5. I'm not throwing that shit away.
right.
So
Goodness.
like this one is called Happy Scrappy.
Look at that. It's gorgeous.
Yes. So and then I don't think I came up with the technique, but I hadn't seen it used anywhere else. And I say I didn't come up with it because there's been way too many brilliant knitters before me where somebody else would have come up with this too. You actually drop stitches to make your fringe, so then there's no ends to weave in
Oh, that is amazing.
because that's not fun, and I'm not going to do it.
Yes,
I'm telling you, I'm like, mm-mm, I'm
I'm
not
with
weaving
you.
in all those ends. I'm going to come up with a way. So I use drop stitches in a couple of my different shawl designs. I've actually got kind of, I think I have a couple of cowls. I have 2 cowls that use that, and 3 or 4 shawl shapes that all use that drop stitch technique to get that
Okay,
fringe. And then you don't have to weave in your ends. It's like
that
the
is
best
life
thing
changing.
ever.
Yes.
But yeah, so I do a lot of scrappy designs and mostly in shawls. I have a few cowl designs that are scrappy as well. But yeah, it's a lot of the same pattern repeats over and over. And or I I have a shawl called Playground, which I didn't grab. I don't know where it is. I'm like 3/4 unpacked from my last show. So my shawls are still
I
packed in
get
their
that.
suitcase.
Yeah.
Um, so Playground is inspired by children being on the playground. And if you've ever watched kids, they kind of like pinball around. Like they're at the swings for like 5 minutes, and then they're on the spinner for like two, and then they're here. And so Playground is a series of different stitches. It has 4 or 5 different stitch patterns, and you have it for 24 rows, and then you break it up with some garter your next 24 rows. So it's changing
Right.
stitch patterns to keep you interested in what you are knitting. The stitch patterns are different, but they're all very simple. So again,
Nice.
with kind of like the social knitting feel. I have a few designs, what I call like next step designs, which
Yeah.
are a little more advanced ones. Because sometimes I do want to showcase that I can do things that are a little more advanced.
Yeah.
I also submit to like magazines and different collections, and sometimes they will give you a here's our idea. Tell us what
Yeah.
inspired you. Send us something that fits into this theme. So my more complicated ones are more fit for a theme from somebody else. They weren't necessarily something that I would have designed with like out that inspiration.
Where
Um,
do you get your inspiration from?
so I actually brought my stuff with me. Most of the time, So like I said, I first and foremost, I am a knitter. So I have a very decent sized yarn stash. I've been a yarn
Yeah.
buyer for a long time before I was a designer. So most of the time my inspiration comes from the yarn itself. I will buy a yarn and I'm like, okay, I can see this. Say it's a variegated yarn, not heavily, lightly variegated. So
Yeah.
say it's mostly pink, it's got a little bit of gold, a little bit of red, a little bit of speckling. And I'm like, okay, so no, nothing, no, not too many what I call like soft stitches. You can't just do like a couple of twisted stitches. You won't see that. I need something a little more bold and graphic, but you don't want to go too intricate either because variegation will hide it. So then I
Yes.
kind of like, I keep notebooks, and of course they're covered in like knitting stickers because they
Yeah.
bring me joy. And then I will do what I call, I will sketch. I don't sketch. I'm a fiber artist. And so like this one, I have a log cabin shawl design idea. And so I have my little sketch here, and then I was thinking like I'll do a light side and a dark side. And then next to it, I will take notes and remind myself like start with a small triangle. You were thinking this many stripes of this color with this. You were thinking opposite sides for this one. I'll refer back to previous designs and be like, oh, use the shaping from drop the fringe so that I know I can
Um,
go back and like grab the shaping from there. So most of my inspiration comes from the yarn itself. I can kind of see it in different stitch patterns. I own like 10 stitch dictionaries. So like sitting right next to me, I have like the Japanese lace stitchwork
yeah.
dictionary. Um, I honestly will just kind of like browse through them and be like, hey, I kind of like that stitch pattern and just kind of like mark it. So then I kind of, they aren't like always up in my brain, but I kind of have like a catalog and I was like, oh, bet you that stitch would look really cool with this. Oh, you could combine this one with this. So I have,
Yeah.
because I've been doing it for so long, I do have now um like a couple of I have one full other notebook plus one that is like 3/4 full. And this one is at like mostly full. By the end of the year, I'll probably need another one. So now I just have like a series of these ideas written down and I can kind of go through
Yeah.
and browse and be like, okay, yep, I definitely want to do this one. Kind of what my like, what do you pick next? Whichever one I'm most excited about knitting, whichever one kind of
Yeah.
like won't leave my brain. I'm like, you've been thinking about that mitered square shawl forever. So that one's gonna come out this year. Um, and I have like a calendar with like sticky notes on it, and it'll be like the name of this shawl. Like okay, you're thinking the wild roadies shawl here. You were thinking this cowl coming out this month, and then I do them on sticky notes so that I can like rearrange because
Okay.
collaboration suggestions and questions and getting accepted to magazines, those come all at different times. So then I have to have a little bit of wiggle room on like where I
Yeah.
can adjust certain things. Sometimes something I thought was going to come out at the end of the year will come out more towards the beginning because it fits in better with the collaboration. So that's kind of a mix. But most of the time, it is yarn first, then design. Now, if I have a design idea, like with Playground, that one has
Yeah.
the 4 different stitch patterns in it. I was doing it and it's got a twisted, half twisted stitch section. So the knits are twisted, the purls are not. And I was like, huh, this would look really cool if you did it in sections, broke them up, and then they would kind of move. So then
Yes.
I have another shawl called Just a Piece, and it's called Just a Piece because it's just a piece of Playground. Um, and that one stemmed from Playground. So once I start one, I'm like, well, that would be a cool idea. Oh, you could try this stitch pattern, but
Yeah.
do it in this shape. So first starting, I was like, what if I run out of ideas? What if nothing else comes? Then I'm screwed. You made this your career and then you're up. This is not good. No, now I have a couple of notebooks worth of
Yeah.
stuff and can refer back to them. I've pulled some of my stuff I had thought of before, sketched out, been able to submit it to magazines and things. So put it into other stuff,
Yeah.
which is cool because that means less work for me because I already had the idea.
We are almost out of time. And so I want to make sure that people know where to find you, and what events you have upcoming so that they can get
Yes.
their hands on your things.
So, my business is all knit up designs, and all my patterns are available on Ravelry and Lovecraft. Ravelry is not accessible to everybody, and I wanted to make sure that my business was, this is both like selfish and not selfish. I want to make sure it's accessible to everybody, because I want you to be able to buy my stuff, but I also want you to have access to it, and I want to be inclusive. So Ravelry has my patterns. My Etsy shop for my bags is all knit up bags. Um, let's see. Instagram is all knit up. Facebook, all knit up designs. I pretty much don't use my like personal name for anything. My last name is hard to pronounce, so I don't even really associate my like names with knitting. Everything is under all knit up designs. And then yeah, my next event, let's see. I will be at Whidbey Island Spin-In, which is
I'll see you there.
are you gonna are you vending or are you coming to spin?
I'm vending. I'm super excited.
So yes, that is the first weekend of April, so 2 weeks. And then
Yes.
after that, I will be at my local yarn shop for local yarn shop day, which is
Yes.
cabled fiber, and that is the 28th of April. I will have a trunk show at a little nitty the next weekend for the yarn crawl. So all knit up designs will be at Jen's shop in Milton, a little nitty, and I will be there Friday and Saturday.
Okay.
And then the next big show is Fiber Fusion in June. So if you are PNW and near Monroe, come to the show. It's so freaking fun. Last year was the first year we've ended there. And I say we because my mom is
Oh,
my booth babe and she is my helper. So if I'm not there, my mom Susan will be. I mean in the booth. I will be at the show. I just like to go walk around and I get nervous before every show. So if we aren't busy right away, I'm like, I have to go walk around because I'm nervous that I'm like, oh my God, I put all this money in. I did all this. I'm not gonna make any money. I know I'm gonna make money, but that doesn't stop me from spiraling on I'm not gonna make any money. Nobody's gonna like my stuff.
right. Right. Okay.
But yes, going to Fiber Fusion, there is like there are sheep there, there are classes there, it's spinning,
Yep.
there's a big spinning circle. It is more like a fiber event than
Yes.
just a like shopping excursion. So
Absolutely.
Fiber Fusion is super fun. I believe it's free to get in, I believe.
Yep.
And I say I believe because I did not attend before I was a vendor. So I don't know any of the regular people stuff because I never went. I tried to go one year. My mom's dog was with me, and that was the year it was going to be like 85. And I was like, well, I can't leave him in the car at 85, and I'm not going to be able to make it. So when I go, I have to drive, take ferry, then drive more. And I was like, I'm spent all my time driving and then I have to drive home with that damn dog again. No, we're not going. So I stayed home.
Okay. And for those that aren't in Washington, what are your next events out of state?
Out of state. So I will be at Oregon Flock and Fiber in Albany, Oregon, the third weekend of October. This will
Hmm.
be our this will be our second year there.
Nice.
And then I also plan to be, we're still in the like putting in applications and getting things accepted, but for SoCal Fiber Fair, which is
Okay.
in Pomona, California, so Southern California.
Perfect.
And that is the weekend before Thanksgiving. And we went
Okay.
last year and it was fabulous. We had such a good time. And the knitters there were just so excited to have a yarn
Oh,
show. It was very cool. My grandparents lived in Southern California, so I had definitely spent time
oh,
down there, but not as an adult. Not once I had like started doing jobs and like it's not as easy to be like, I'm just gonna take time off as when you can when you're a kid. So
right.
we had a
Right.
great time. But I can't think of any other, I don't think I have any more Oregon shows or any
Okay.
Idaho shows as of right now. Things
Okay.
pop up. Like you never know. when I applied to
Right.
SoCal last year, I didn't even realize that there had been a show. I heard about it from another vendor. She was like, "You should apply." And I was like, "Okay." And I did. And they're like,
Yep.
"You got in." So there's always the possibility that all of the designs will show up somewhere else. The plan right now is to have design going with Allie, and she owns, I want to say, travel road trip sock yarn.
Okay.
She will be at Rhinebeck, and one of my designs will be there.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, it's
I love it.
right. Well, and then when I'm in California, I will most likely also be having a trunk show at Adina's store,
Perfect.
probably Black Friday, Small Business Saturday, and that Sunday. Um, that's not 100%, but when we talked last year, I was like, "So what do you think about doing it again?" She's like, "Of course." So if we're down there for SoCal, we will most likely be there for Thanksgiving as well.
Amazing. Is there anything else you want to leave us with? Any thoughts, any inspiration?
Just be just be willing to like try something new. Like
Yeah.
that a lot of I do a lot of what I call Barbie shawls when I started design, and I'll get like this far and be like, "This is not working." And I have to rip it out and start over. Or, "Hey, you should have had an odd number instead of an even number. I'm going to rip that out." So no, don't think designers always know what they're doing, because 100% we absolutely do not. There's a lot of trial and error on making things work. And we're just regular people too. We're really just like super excited, yarny people. I want people to come and talk to me about my designs. I want you to come talk to me about yarn and patterns. I want to talk about all of it. So I guess I shouldn't talk about as in for like all designers, but the vast majority of us are just like super enthusiastic knitters. We're like, come talk to us about knitting. It's the best thing ever.
Absolutely.
But
And
yeah,
before you go, I just want to open it up in case Teresa has any questions. If so, please drop them in the chat. I know that we will give just a few more moments just in case.
I am totally open to that. I have my, like I said, my sock knitting with me. And Teresa, I
Okay.
think it's freaking fabulous that you go to Cloud Carousel. It's such a small world sometimes.
Right? It's
To like
crazy.
connect with you through Jessica, who owned a shop in Tacoma and is a Washington dyer, for me to be like, "Yeah, I grew up in California and I worked at this shop and like this is where it's from." And then for you to be like, "Hey, I go there."
Right? It's a
It's
small world. And
wonderful.
Teresa used to live here. That is how I met her.
Yeah, sorry for
Ah,
So
the
it is the
background noise.
smallest world. Yes.
Yeah, so we we moved here for on military orders, and so that's why we're at this location now.
are
Um,
you based out of Travis?
yes.
My
Well, my
my dad
husband
was a
is.
reservist there for 35 years. So
I'm
that's
sorry.
my dad was a reservist for 35 years. So
Oh,
that's why we
wow.
were in the area, because my dad worked at Travis.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so my husband is assigned at Travis here. So we used to be at McCord at JBLM. That's when I met Jessica, and then we moved here for his next assignment.
It is a small world. Well, you have found yourself in a very good community. I don't know if you've gone yet, but your local festival is in Dixon and it's called Lambtown, and it is the first weekend of October.
Okay, we missed the last one,
So
but
if you get a chance to go, it's wonderful. There's
okay.
like two inside buildings. There's outside stuff. There's sheep jog trials and there's spinning events. Like very very cool. So that was the first fiber festival I ever went to, and I vended there a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, it usually coincides with my local festival here in Port Angeles, but hopefully you can come into Cloth Carousel when I have a trunk show and we can say hi, because
Yeah, that would be fabulous.
yeah, because I, like I said, I grew up there. I know I used to work for Adina's crew and her shop was in Winters. The world is so small. It's always funny when I'm like, "I'm from Winters," and people are like, "Oh, I actually know where that is." Like, excuse me, you know where that is?
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
I'm from Tracy. I don't know if you know where that
yeah,
is.
I totally
Yeah.
know where Tracy is. Okay, so yeah, because I went to school at UC Merced, so I have been all up and down in that area. Both of my sisters still live in California. So what a small, wonderful world.
Yeah.
Sierra, it's amazing having you